Hi everyone, welcome to another painting video. This time I'll be painting Crono from the Black Rose Wars expansion with the same name. Crono is a massive model, and with big ones like these, I like to start off with a Rattlecan Zenithal Prime, though if you have an airbrush, obviously that is a better choice. If you don't know how to do a Zenithal Prime with Rattlecans, watch the first 70 seconds of this video. The first part I'm starting with is Crono's armor. I'm mixing up three colors for this. The first is 2-to-1 Incubi Darkness and Plate Mail Metal, then a 1-to-1 mix, and the third, which I didn't show here, is almost entirely Plate Mail Metal with just a tiny bit of Incubi Darkness added. I'm going to be using the dark and light areas of the Zenithal Prime as a guide for where to put these colors. Anything that's black is getting the darkest metal color. For rounded surfaces like the armor plates on the legs, we'll have to do a little bit of wet blending. The bottom third of the plates is getting the darkest color. After that, I'm painting the top 2/3 with the middle color. Once that's on, I'm painting a thin strip along where the armor looks like it should be the brightest with some of the lightest metal color. As I go, I'm muddling the edges where the different colors meet with a damp brush. Now, if wet blending isn't your thing, then I'd recommend just painting all of the armor with the middle color. You'll still get some shading effects just from the Zenithal Prime. I'm only using 3 colors so I can exaggerate this effect. Now, fortunately, much of the armor has really sharp angles, so entire surfaces of the armor are either black or they're white. Again, I'm using the darkest color on the black areas, and I'm using the middle color on the rest of it. I'm not using the lightest color on these plates. Later I want to do an edge highlight on this part of the armor, and it won't be visible if I use that light color. Also, I want all the armor to have this nice green tint. Originally, I wasn't planning on removing Crono from the base, but I quickly realized it would be impossible to paint a big chunk of him if I didn't. It was surprisingly easy to remove him though. I just poked the edge of my knife around his feet and gave him a wiggle. So here is most of the armor painted. I deliberately left some of it unpainted, such as on the right arm and around the feet and shoulders. I want to use a different color later just to break things up. Next, I'm going to put a wash on the armor, but I don't want to cover the whole thing because that could create a mess. Instead, I'm going to trace around all of the bolts and the armor panels. This is a 1-to-1 mix of Celia Green Shade and Nuln Oil, though using a pure black wash would be fine as well. Once that's done, I'm going to edge highlight all of the armor with some bright silver. You can keep using Plate Mail Metal or switch to something brighter. This one is Shining Silver from Army Painter. You can do this one of two ways. The hard way by using the side of a small brush, or the easy way using a dry brush and trying to focus on all the edges. This way is a little messier, but as long as you're careful, it still looks good. Next up is the cloak and the loincloth. I'm starting off by painting the entire thing black, including all of the hanging chains. Next, I want to slowly build up a highlight of burgundy. I'm mixing about 3 parts black, 1 part Barak-nar Burgundy, and I'm painting all of the fabric with this. Now I'm mixing in a little more burgundy. So this is about 1-to-1 burgundy and black now, and I'm going to paint all of the raised parts of the cloak and partway into the grooves. Only the center of the creases aren't being painted. Once again, I'm mixing in more of the burgundy, and now it's almost pure Barak-nar Burgundy. I'm painting a more narrow area now, focusing on the most raised parts of the cloak and also doing a thick edge highlight around the cloak. Once this layer dries, I'm adding a second one of the same color to a slightly smaller area, working my way towards the top of the folds. For the final layer, I'm mixing in some Screamer Pink and I'm doing a final edge highlight as well as painting a thin region along the top of all the folds. So here's how the cloak is looking so far, a nice deep burgundy color. Next I'm painting all of the chains hanging from the front and the back of the fabric. All the chain links are being painted with plate mail metal and the ends of the chains are being painted with Balthazar Gold. For now I'm leaving the severed arms unpainted. While I still have this plate mail metal on my palette, I'm going to paint the inside of all these giant screw looking things. They kind of remind me of something you'd see on the Tallarn marine armor in StarCraft. I'm also using plate mail for this part of the head of the staff. Next I'm going to paint all the parts of the armor that I skipped over at the beginning. I deliberately left some bits of armor unpainted because I thought it would look a bit boring if all the armor was one color. I've mixed two different bronze colors for the rest of the armor. The first is 1:1 XV88 and Balthazar Gold, and the other is about 2:1 Balthazar Gold and Rhinox Hide. I didn't do any wet blending for this part. If something was mostly in light, I painted it entirely with the light bronze, and if it was mostly dark, it got the dark bronze. So you can see that the armored collar got the lighter bronze, while these shin guards are getting the darker bronze. In some places where there was trim, like on this boot, I painted the trim with a lighter color and the recessed part of the boot with a darker color. Next I'm going to paint all the faces on the armor. Rather than paint these like normal, I'm going to stipple on 3 different colors to give it a somewhat textured look. I'm just using an old brush that I normally use for dry brushing and dabbing these colors on, starting with the lightest Ulthuan Grey. Then I'll repeat the same thing with the next color, Celestra Grey, and then Mechanicus Standard Grey. Next I want to add a few brighter colors to make some of the features pop, so I'll be using bright bronze and shining silver. The bronze is getting used on the outside of the giant screws and also on the eyes of the faces. The shining silver is being used on all the little bolts and rivets scattered around on the armor. Next I'm going to mix up a wash for all the areas that were just painted. You don't need a bottle for this, you can just mix it up on your palette, but I'm going to use it on a couple of robots I'm working on, so I want to set aside the extra for later. This wash is going to be 3 parts Nuln Oil, 2 parts Agrax Earthshade, and 1 part Drakenhof Nightshade. In terms of drops, I used 12, 8, and 4, and that was enough for what I needed. This wash, that I'm just going to call Machine Wash, is going over everything that was just painted, so all the faces, all of the bronze armor, screws, and rivets. Next I'm going to paint the skin using 3 different colors, Slaanesh Grey, Daemonette Hide, and then a 1-to-1 mix of each. Just like before, I'm using the Zenithal Prime as a guide for where to put these. The darkest areas are going to get the Daemonette Hide, and the lightest will get the Slaanesh Grey. I'm going to wet blend where the edges of these 2 colors meet, but I'm also going to get some of the middle color on my brush when I do it. I'm also going to use this middle color in places where the skin is mostly covered in grey primer. Now again, this part is completely optional. If you didn't do the Zenithal Prime and you don't like wet blending, then I'd recommend covering all of the skin with Daemonette Hide. For the face, I'm covering everything below the brow with Daemonette Hide, and the forehead is being painted with the 1-to-1 mix. That's the skin painted, and Crono's got a bit of a Thanos look going on now. Next I want to paint the cables running along the various parts of the body. I'm first using a mix of 1-to-1 Blighted Gold from P3 and Plate Mail Metal from Army Painter. This is being used on all the cables on the arms and legs, and 4 or 5 of the cables running along the back of the head. Alright, I'm going to take a little break from Crono to do the base and reattach it. All the hard to reach parts are done, and I want to be able to hold the base instead of Crono whenever possible. You can see I have a mix of different greys, and I'm starting by completely covering the floor with Eshin Grey. After that, I'm painting random stones with the remaining grey colors. Once those have all dried, I'm completely covering the base with the same machine wash that I used on Crono. After the wash is dried, I'm doing a dry brush with Celestra Grey. All of the vines are getting a base coat of Caliban Green. I'm not using the second green yet, I'm first going to paint the roses. For each of the roses, I'm first painting the entire thing with a bright orange. Next, I'm making a 1-to-1 mix of that same orange and some bright yellow, and then thinning that with a lot of water to make a wash. I'm going to put this bright orange wash over all the roses. After that, I'm painting the outside of the rose with a really dark grey, and then I'm using that same grey to dry brush the tips of the rose petals. Now, due to a lack of a lot of detail on these roses, they kind of look like burnt tomatoes, so you may want to skip the dry brushing part. But I'm trying to keep them as close to the box art as possible, so I'm going to leave mine. The final step is to use the brighter green, Warpstone Glow, to paint the top half of all the vines, and to use it to touch up any mistakes with the other colors. Next, I'm painting the rim with more dark grey. This one is German Grey from Vallejo. Once all the paint dried, I sprayed the entire base with a matte varnish. And now we can finally glue this guy back onto the base. Now I'm going to paint all of the remaining cables. I'm using 2 different colors for this. The first is going to be 1-to-1 Plate Metal and Abaddon Black. I'm using this for all of the cables that are not on top of the head, so everything on the side of the head and the sides of the body. I'm also using it for the machinery that's connecting the human to the front of Crono's chest. All of the cables on top of Crono's head are being painted with pure plate mail metal. I want a little variety of color in these cables, so I'm painting a few of the thinner ones with a desaturated red. I decided to use Khorne Red for this. Next I'm putting a black wash over all of the cables on Crono. The only ones I'm skipping are the ones that are embedded under the skin and the arms and legs. I'm using Nuln Oil Gloss for this. It's going to create a cleaner look for the metallic colors than regular Nuln Oil. Next I'm doing a very light dry brush with some gold paint over the bronze areas just to pick out the edges of the armor. Now I'm painting the eyes. I'm going to start off with a base coat of pure white using White Scar. Before I do the glowing eyes, I'm first going to touch up the skin and do a few more highlights. I'm just checking that I haven't gotten any wash or metallic colors anywhere, and I'm using Slaanesh Grey and the 1-to-1 mix of Slaanesh Grey and Daemonette Hide on the raised parts of the skin. For the face, I'm highlighting around the eye sockets where the glow effect will go, just to make it stand out a bit better. For this part I've mixed fluorescent green with some water to thin it out, and I'm just glazing it over the white part of the eye. I want it to have a green tint, but still be quite bright. Next I'm adding 3 or 4 layers of glaze around the eye socket where I highlighted to create a glowing effect. I'm not going right up to the white of the eye with this. I still want the white of the eye to be framed in darkness. Next I've taken some of the dark purple, Daemonette Hide, and I've mixed it with some black paint and a lot of water to create a dark purple wash. I'm painting this into the creases in Crono's face and under the nose and the lips. I'm going to use this dark wash between the toes as well, just to give them some more depth. Now I'm going to paint the staff, the man hanging out the front of Crono's chest, and the severed arms. I've created a 2-to-1 mix of water and Rhinox Hide, and I'm using it all over the shaft of the staff. I'm also using this to base coat the body of the man and the severed arms that are hanging on the ends of some of the chains. Next I'm giving the hair a wash of Nuln Oil. Now I'm switching to Tallarn Sand and I'm dry brushing the entire staff. Once that's done, I'm switching to a normal brush and I'm painting the body of the man and the severed arms with Tallarn Sand as well. I'm next painting the face and the hands of the man, but I'm not spending a lot of time on this. Just a few coats of any flesh tone and then a wash with Reikland Fleshshade. The body of the man and the severed arms also get a wash of Agrax Earthshade. The eyes are just getting a coat of White Scar. To finish off the hair, I'm giving it a quick dry brush with Celestra Grey and then one more wash with Nuln Oil. Next I'm going to paint the axe head at the top of the staff, and for this I'm going to mix up 3 different shades of bronze. The first one is going to be an equal mix of plate mail metal and Balthazar Gold, the second one is pure Balthazar Gold, and the third is going to be equal parts Abaddon Black and Balthazar Gold. I'm first going to start off by covering the entire axe head except for the blade and the very back of the axe with pure Balthazar Gold. The blade and the back of the axe are getting covered with the lightest bronze color. The darker color I just ended up using on the underside of the blade. Once that dried, I completely covered the axe head with Drakenhof Nightshade. The Nightshade looks black against the bronze and has taken a lot of the shine out of it. I'm going to reapply the bright bronze only to the blade. I'm going to be careful not to hit any of the cracks as well. I'm also using the bright bronze, which I should clarify is the plate mail and Balthazar Gold mix, to edge highlight the entire axe head. Then I'm doing a final dry brush edge highlight with some bright silver from Army Painter. This is the final step, so after this I'm spraying the whole miniature with a matte varnish. And there you have it. It was a long road, but he's finally done. Thank you very much to all my patrons for supporting these videos, and a special thanks to Brian Jones for sponsoring the channel. There's more coming from Black Rose Wars, Nemesis, and Kingdom Death, so if these are games that you're into, please like and subscribe. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section. I try to answer all questions as soon as I get them. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you very much for watching.